You're listening to the Study Podcast with Dr. Paul Wegner on the Old Testament historical books. I'm your host, Tyler Sanders, and I'm here with Dr. Paul Wegner, who's going to give us the Hebrew word of the day.
All right. Once again, the way I've been doing this, there's been multiple words, right? But this one is kind of neat too. Sorry about that.
I see a lot of highlighted text in this one, almost more highlighted text than non-highlighted
That's
text.
Right. All right. This is 1 Kings 1:21, and it says, "And it came about when my Lord the king sleeps or lays down." It's talking about Nathan is talking to David, and he says that when you die, that's what that talks about. When he says when he sleeps with his father, he's dying, that I and my son Solomon will be considered offenders. It's this word here. It's the word sinners. But in this context, it doesn't really mean they're sinning. It means that they're going against the other king. Even though it's the word sinners, it means conspirators or something like that, or offenders is how I've translated it.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of neat. And then the next thing I wanted to show you is, remember we talked about Absalom going out. He was trying to be king, and David fled and all that until he was killed. Adonijah must be the next oldest son. Then the last phrase here is, "Long live the king Adonijah." And so that's part of that accession ceremony, apparently. And then remember we talked about once that names in the biblical text usually have a meaning. This one's kind of interesting. My Lord is Yahweh. David probably named him, or, at least one of either him or his wife probably named him, but they gave him a very name that would be very, I think, really respectful to Yahweh. So I thought that was very helpful.
Right.
Okay. So that's all our Hebrew words for today.
That's a lot of Hebrew words.
Yeah.
But
Sorry about all that.
Good. It's really good Hebrew words. and it's a good reminder of where we are. We've started in 1 Kings.
Yep.
And we made it through the story of, I think we went all the way through Solomon, basically, right? Kind of Solomon's reign.
Yep. And that's
so where are we going now?
That's what I wanted to pick up. Remember, we got done with Samuel, and now Solomon is like the last part of, he's the next one to be king. First Kings basically starts with him becoming king and all of that. So what I wanted to show you is, so if you're thinking about, there's a First Kings that has some kings in it. Then you get to at the end of First Kings and the beginning of Second Kings, you've got the stories of Elijah and Elisha, and then the kings pick up again. So it's kind of an interesting structure for you.
Yeah, that's cool.
First king that we need to talk about is Jeroboam. Remember, this is Solomon at that point is getting ready to die, and his son Rehoboam takes over. And Rehoboam wants to make the tasks even harder for the northern kingdom. And remember, at that point, they're going to split. And Jeroboam is going to take over the north. And Rehoboam, which is David's son, is going to take over the south. Okay? All right. Now, I wanted to show you what it says in 1 Kings 12:16. When all Israel saw the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, "What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now look after your own house, David." You remember when they made David king, they said almost the same thing, only in reverse. David, you're bone of our bones and flesh of our flesh, and we're going to serve you. Well, it sounds like when they don't want to serve him, they just reverse it and say, "Oh, take care of yourself, David." I'm going, wow, that's can you believe they did that? Anyway. Okay. In the north, Jeroboam sets up things that are similar to in the south. Jeroboam's smart enough to know that if every year the Israelites are going down to Jerusalem and worshiping, because remember every Jewish male is supposed to go down 3 times. He's smart enough to know that if they go down, they're going to be, before long, they're going to say, "Wait a minute. If this is the real worship, we better do it down here," and he'll lose all of the northern tribes. So he's smart enough to know that, and so he sets up a false worship, virtually similar and yet opposite of what things have been said. So he sets up 2 golden calves, which makes it very convenient. One's in the very far north, one in the very far south, so that no matter where the Israelites are going to be, they're going to be within probably 25 miles of a place of worship for them. Then, so it's not so inconvenient to go down to Jerusalem. Now you can do it at these places, I assume is what he's thinking. He also set up houses on the high places. Remember, he doesn't want them to go down to the temple anymore. So he makes it that they can go worship on the high places. Now, remember, that happened before the temple was built, right? So it's kind of similar to what's going on. He sets up priests, but they're not Levites. My guess, if you were a Levitical priest during Jeroboam's time, you would have headed down south, because they're the ones that give you at least the logic of why they're even kings, or why they're priests at all. So in the north, he made different kind of priests. And then the last one is he sets up this festival in the 8th month. Do you remember the Day of Atonement was on the 7th month? So I'm assuming this one is to mirror that. So to be close in time, and probably has similar kind of things, so that they don't feel like they're totally abandoning their God. They're doing stuff similar to it. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can see.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's real logical, I think, and he I think he was right that he'd lose all the people in the north if he didn't do this. So, but it was totally against what God had said, and that's what made it so bad.
And essentially, this is for political reasons.
Yes,
like it is logical, but it's still not. You wouldn't say that this is being done actually to make things easier or better for. Like, he doesn't think this is legitimate in a way. This is like a expedient.
Yeah, but I'm hoping he's trying to get the people to think it's legitimate, right?
Yeah,
That's why I wanted to talk about this next thing. Okay, in 1 Kings 12:28, it says, "So the king consulted and made 2 golden calves, and said to them, it is too much for you to go down to Jerusalem. See, that's just too hard for you. Behold your gods, O Israel, that brought you up from the land of Egypt." Now, I'm thinking, okay, do you remember the last time they built a calf and it was I'm going, what's he thinking? This has got to be the worst idea he ever had.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think what he's doing in the ancient Near East, it was real common for different gods to be seated on thrones. But if that's true, they're not. Then Jeroboam's not saying, "Oh, we're going to totally give you another god." We're gonna go back and like in the past, we made this throne for God so that he'll sit on it. Here now you can see where your God dwells. So it gives them, just like in the temple, that was supposed to be where God dwelled on the ark. Now you can see these bulls and they're where God dwells. So I think he's trying to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, not only convenient, but in the ancient Near Eastern, these were common ways to show things. And I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
And notice he's trying to equate it with the God that brought him up from Egypt. So I think that's what's going on there. So rather than having a different God, these are the same gods that you've always been serving, only now you can see where he dwells. And just like in the temple, you could see where he dwelled down there.
Yeah.
All right, this next one I think is really interesting. I'm sorry, it's a lot of reading, but I think it's worth it. I'm going to read. It's called the disobedient prophet. Okay, and at least that's what I call it. 1 Kings 13:1. Now behold, there came a man of God from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, "O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places to burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you." Then he gave a sign the same day, saying, "This is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be split apart, and ashes are on it shall be poured out." Now, when the king heard the saying of the man of God, which he cried against the altar of Bethel, Jeroboam stretched out his hand from the altar, saying, "Seize him." But his hand, when he stretched it out against him, swiveled or dried up, so that he could not draw it back to himself. The altar also was split apart, and the ashes were poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. The king said to the man of God, please entreat the Lord your God and pray for me that my hand may be restored. So the man of God entreated the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him, and it became as it was before. Now an old prophet was living in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the deeds which the man of God had done that day at Bethel, and the words which he had spoken to the king. These also he related to their father. Their father said to them, which way did he go? Now I'm sorry, but I'm old enough to know that when you hear that phrase, which way did he go? I remember Deputy Dog. It was a commercial, and it just, I am so sorry, but that just, every time I see that, okay, I'll keep going. And now his son had seen the way which the man of God had came from Judah and had gone. And he said to his son, saddle the donkey for me. So they saddled the donkey for him, and he rode away on it. So he went after the man of God and found him sitting under an oak. And he said to him, are you the man of God who came from Judah? And he said, I am. Then he said to him, come home with me and eat bread. And he said, I cannot return with you, nor will I go with you, nor will I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For a command came to me by the word of the Lord, you shall eat no bread or drink no water there. Do not return by the way which you came. And he said to him, I also am a prophet like you, and an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you to your house that he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied to him. So he went back with him and ate bread in his house and drank water. Now it came about as they were sitting down at the table that the word of the Lord came to the prophet who had brought him back. And he cried to the man of God who came from Judah, saying, thus says the Lord, because you have disobeyed the command of the Lord and have not observed the commandment which the Lord your God commanded you, but have returned and eaten bread and drunk water in the place which he said to you, eat no bread and drink no water, your body shall not come to the grave of your fathers. It came about after he'd eaten bread and after he had drunk that he saddled the donkey for him and the prophet whom he had brought back. Now, when he had gone, a lion met him on the way and killed him, and his body was thrown on the road, and the donkey standing beside it, and the lion also was standing beside the body. And behold, the men passed by and saw the body thrown on the road, and the lion standing beside the body. So they came and told it in the city where the old man lived. Now the prophet who had brought him back from the way heard it. He said, it is the man of God who disobeyed the command of the Lord. Therefore the Lord had given him to the lion, which has torn him and killed him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke to him. Then he spoke to his son, saying, saddle the donkey for me. And they saddled it. And the lion had not eaten the body, nor torn the donkey. So the prophet took up the body of the man of God and laid it on the donkey and brought it back and came to the city of the old prophet to mourn and to bury him. He laid his body in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, alas, my brother. After he had buried him, he spoke to his son, saying, when I die, bury me in the grave in which the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. For the thing shall surely come to pass which he cried to the Lord, and the word of the Lord against the altar of Bethel, and against all the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Samaria. Wow. What is that, right?
A lot of twists and turns in that story.
What is going on? Yeah. So this prophet gets killed, and this other guy now says, oh, now he's the man of God, and put him in my group. Yeah. Tyler, do you know what a minute mystery is? Oh, they were, I guess, in my age when we used to do these. But you have a minute to figure it out. They give you a statement, and you have to figure out what happened. So here's what it's like. This,
it's like a logic game.
Yeah. Here it is. A man is lying in the field. He's got a pack on his back, and he's dead. And then you've got to figure out how he died and what happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. And you have a minute to figure it out, or if you don't.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The answer to that one is it's a parachute that's a pack on his back. And so he jumped out of a plane and it didn't open and he died. Okay. All right.
So it's kind of a riddle. It's kind of a riddly. Yeah.
All right. I think this is a minute mystery. We've got to figure out what is going on in this story and why is it even here? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I think the answer is. All right. So the prophet that came down from, remember, there are a lot of prophets during the time when, the time of the kings. and they didn't know whether they were true prophets or false prophets. So
Okay.
here's this prophet from Judah comes up and gives this prophecy, but the people up
Yep.
north, they don't know if he's a true prophet or a false prophet. So this disobedient prophet comes and he comes and talks to him and says, come back to my home. And he says, well, I can't because God told me not to. So if he can get him to do what he's not supposed to do and God punishes him, then he knows he's a true prophet. So by the end of it, he's now figured out this is a true prophet. And what he says is going to come about. So I think what he's doing is he lied to him to get him to the funny thing is the prophet from Judah told him everything he needed to know to find out if this guy really was a prophet of God. So I think that's what's going on. So this story that seems to make no sense actually makes a lot of sense. And now the disobedient prophet from Judah or from Israel knows that this guy is a true prophet and what he says is going to happen. And that's what he told his sons. Does that make sense?
It does, but it's very interesting because the disobedient prophet, he lies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he straight up lies to get this thing to run this test, I guess.
Yeah. But you know what? The guy up north, he probably was a false prophet anyway, right? Because he's not following.
He would have to be, right?
Yeah, because he's not. He's in this probably in this worship that Jeroboam has set up. So yeah. Oh well,
but then still comes around by the end when he recognizes that the prophet from Judah is legitimate.
Yeah,
and kind of falls in line, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, and then knows that what he'd said is going to happen to this altar.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting. Man, what a twist and turn.
Yeah, I thought it's worth reading because it just makes no sense at first, but in actual fact, it's really true. So all right,
that's good.
All right, the next stories that we have are basically different kings. And what I try to do is the biblical tense will go back and forth between Judah and Israel. So what I've done is up in the corner, I've always got the country that the prophet or that the king is from. And I'm just going to give like important events that happen in these people's lives and then got a few Bible verses for it. Okay. Gotcha. So Rehoboam, remember, he's Solomon's son. So he's the one that took over and split the kingdom. Okay. So he reigns 41 years and I'm sorry, he's 41 years old and he reigns 17 years. He's an evil king. The text makes it real clear. He splits the kingdom. He rebels against God and builds high places with sacred pillars and asherim. He has male cult prostitutes, and he did according to all the abominations of the people that they removed from the land. God removed from the land. Remember? The Canaanites were punished for their wickedness, right? I don't know if you remember, but we talked about that when Abraham came through the land the first time, God told him, he couldn't harm the people of the land. When he comes back, then when the Israelites come back, now they're able to punish the people. And the phrase is, because the sin of the Amorites was not yet complete when Abraham was there. So apparently it is now.
So it's done,
Yeah, so it's interesting. Rehoboam is now taking the people back to doing the same kind of things that they did before Israel was there. And so, of course, he's going to be. Verse 24 makes it real clear. There also were male cult prostitutes in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations which the Lord disposed before the sons of Israel. That's sad, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so it's Rehoboam, and then during his reign, he gets punished by God, and Shishak, the king of Egypt, basically devastated Jerusalem in 926. But verse 25 says, and it happened in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, the king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. He took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and he took everything, even taking all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. Now remember, Solomon had built the temple, and remember, during his time, gold flowed just like, it was an extremely rich time. Well, Shishak basically comes and takes all that and takes it back to Egypt.
Right.
So you can see that's going to be a major problem. And then during his reign also, there was constant war with Jeroboam. Verse 30 says, there was a war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continually. And that's kind of a summary of basically the punishment Rehoboam gets. Okay, the next king, he's in Judah again. It's his son, Abijah is his name, or Abijah is how we would probably say it. He reigned 3 years in Judah. He's an evil king, but he says the phrase is, he does not act like David. And again, there's constant war between him and Jeroboam. Here's what verse 4 says. For King David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem to raise up his son after him and to establish Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the sight of the Lord and had not turned aside from anything he had commanded him all the days of his life. So because of righteousness or doing what God says, God is going to make sure there's always somebody on the throne that's one of his line. So, and that's going to happen in Judah all the way through. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So he's a wicked king. I don't know if you remember, but in the Davidic king covenant, it actually says that when your sons disobey, I will punish them with the rod of men and the stripes of the sons of men. So that's one of the times, like Shishak coming is going to be one of the times that his sons are going to be punished. But he won't. But God promises he won't take the kingship away from him. Okay. So here's Abijah. All right. And then there's Asa. Asa was a good king. He reigned 41 years in Judah. He put away the male prostitutes and idols. Verse 11 says, Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord, like David, his father. We're going to see in a bunch of these kings that when they do the right thing, they'll be similar to David. If they do the wrong thing, they'll be like their father that did something really wicked. Like in the north, it'll be like Jeroboam and stuff like that. We don't know about the queen mother, but Micaiah was the mother who made an idol, and Asa destroyed it. Verse 12 to 13 says, and he put away the male cult prostitutes and removed all the idols. He also removed his mother from being queen mother. Now, we don't know what this queen mother is, but it must be a pretty important position, because they often will talk about the queen mother, and now she's being removed from being that. Well, how do you remove him from being his mother, right? So it's a position or something like that. All right, because she had made that horrid image of as an Asherah, and Asa cut down her horrid image and burned it in the book of Kidron. So it's interesting. Again, Asa's a good king, but his mother seems to have wandered away in the other direction. And it says there was constant war between Asa and Baasha. That's the next one in the north that's going to be the king.
Okay.
And he paid Ben-Hadad Syria to attack Israel. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. We'll hear more about that. Now the war was between Asa and Baasha, the king of Israel, all their days. Here's what it talks about when it says he paid to Ben-Hadad. Then Asa took all the silver and all that was left in the treasuries of the house. By this time, there's probably not a whole lot more, right? And the treasuries of the king's house, and delivered them over to the land of the servants, of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tibramon, the son of Hazion, the king of Aram, who lived in Damascus, saying, let there be a treaty between you and me, as between my father and your father. Behold, I have sent you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so that he will withdraw from me. So Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. So he pays him off to attack Israel, and it worked.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to head up to the northern kingdom. Okay. So remember, I told you the biblical text keeps going back and forth. Baasha is going to be up in the north. He reigns for 24 years. He's a bad king. He walks in the ways of Jeroboam. Everyone up in the north, all those kings are going to be bad. So you'll never see a good one up there. Verse 34 says, he did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of Jeroboam, and in his sin that he made Israel sin. There was war with Asa, and Jehu, the son of Hanani, prophesied against Baasha. His family will die like Jeroboam's. I don't know if you know this, but in the north, there's going to be several dynasties. And a lot of times God's going to send a person against them to wipe out the previous dynasty, and then they set up their own. Verse 2 says this: inasmuch as I exalted you from the dust and made you leader over my people. This is God talking to Jeroboam. And you have walked in the ways of Jeroboam and have made my people Israel sin, provoking me to anger with their sins. Behold, I will consume Baasha and his house, and I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. I said Jeroboam, but it's actually to Baasha that he says this. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So
but it's about Jeroboam.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So that's the punishment, and every once in a while you'll see that, and the Book of Kings will explain it, so we'll know that God's doing this. Okay, in the north again, you've got Elah. He reigns only 2 years. He's the son of Baasha again. He's a bad king. He walks in the ways of Jeroboam. Jehu, the son of Hanani, prophesied against Baasha, and his family will die like Jeroboam's. And in fact, Zimri, who's the commander of half of the chariots, killed Elah and wiped out his family. Verse 12 says, thus Zimri destroyed all the household of Baasha according to the word of the Lord. For all the sins of Baasha and the sins of Elah his son, which they sinned, which they made Israel sin, provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their idols. So he makes it pretty clear God's is using Zimri to punish the nation or the kings before him.
Right.
All right. Now here's Zimri. Zimri lasts 7 days.
Oh gosh.
You just saw that he killed Baasha and his family. Okay. Zimri is he's in charge of half the chariots. I don't know if you remember that, but it said that. Okay, so he kills the king ahead of him, and then the problem was the rest of them, the other half of the chariot people, they actually crowned Omri, and then who came after Zimri.
Wow.
That's where they'd fled to, was taken. He went into the citadel of the king's house and he burned it down around him. So he committed suicide, basically. That's not all of it.
Wow.
So at this time, so remember, Omri is the one that goes after Zimri.
Yeah.
Okay. Another person named Tibni comes and actually over where Zimri started. So he's the other one. So there's like a civil war going on in the northern kingdom between Omri and Zimri first, and then Tibni. So that lets you know God is really punishing this nation. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So Omri is the one that becomes king. Okay. So he prevailed over Tibni. He actually reigns for 12 years over Israel. And he's the one that bought the hill of Samaria and built it into his capital. So it's kind of, verse 24 says, he bought the hill Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and he built on the hill and named the city which he had built Samaria, after the name of Shemer, the owner of the hill. So Shemer is it's like a part of the word Samaria. So that's where that comes from. But he says it pays 2 talents of silver. A talent was 75 pounds. So that lets you know. Yeah. So that's a lot of silver.
Yeah.
All right. And then, and basically it was a hill where, it wasn't a city before that. So that's why Samaria, when they've excavated it, they find that it's laid out really straight and square and all of that.
Oh,
because there wasn't a city before it. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. All right.
Interesting, huh?
It says that Omri was more wicked than the ones before him. Verse 25 says, Zimri did evil in the sight of the Lord and acted more wickedly than all who were before him. For he walked in the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and in his sins, which he had made Israel sin, provoking the Lord God of Israel with their idols. So now the next couple of kings, you're going to hear that same kind of thing, that he does even worse than the one ahead of him. In the northern kingdom, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, it's probably a really good example of what has to be done to take power, and it's probably a really good back and forth. You're seeing kind of a comparison, I guess, between the northern and southern kingdoms, where you still have some evil kings in the south, but there's good, and the good ones are good because they are like David. And they remain faithful to God. But the other way to to remain king is to just be worse than the person ahead of you. You have to
Yeah.
be more ruthless and more, more willing to compromise.
That's it. And kill everyone who was in the other line, basically.
Yeah.
But Ahab, and you probably heard of him, he's a wicked king. He
Yeah, yeah.
reigns 22 years. He's more wicked than everyone before him. And he married Jezebel, who's a Sidonian. And Jezebel, she's like
Sure.
she's real famous for being so wicked. Verse 31 says, it came about as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he married Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, a king of the Sidonians, and went to serve Baal and worship him. So he erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So remember, Baal's not even supposed to be around. And here's Ahab now making a temple to him.
A temple for him. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. It also says he built an Asherah pole. I don't remember Baal and Asherah were supposed to be male and female counterparts.
Oh, right.
It also says that Hiel, the Bethlehemite, built Jericho and lost his family according to Joshua's word. Joshua 6:26 said that, I'll read verse 24. I say, in these days, Hiel the Bethlehemite built Jericho, and he laid its foundations with the loss of Ephraim, his firstborn, and set up his gates with the loss of his youngest son, Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he had spoke through Joshua, the son of Nun. And that's in Joshua 6:26. He said that was going to happen. Huh. What's interesting, I actually believe that means that he lost all of his sons. So he lost the first one when he's setting up the walls, or set up the gates. I'm sorry, setting up the walls or foundation. Then he said he lost his last one as he was setting up the gates. And the gates were usually the last thing to go up. So my guess is he lost every one of his sons in between them too.
Through that process.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would have thought that he would have known that prophecy and would have probably stayed away from it, especially if you lost your firstborn son, right? You would think, man, I'd start looking around and saying, what's going on?
What am I doing here?
Okay, remember I told you that we're going to have Elijah and Elisha kind of in the middle of these? Okay, so Elijah first, and then we'll have Elisha. Elijah predicts a drought in chapter 17. He's fed by the ravens at the brook of Kerith. And the widow of Zarephath, she's ready to die, and Elijah expands her oil and her flour so that she lives. Verse 7 says, and it happened after a while that the brook dried up because there was no rain. Then the word of the Lord came, arise and go to Zarephath. And that's where he protects that woman. Elijah in chapter 17 also raises the widow's son. And remember, that stretches out on the child 3 times and he comes to life finally.
Yeah.
Verse 21 says, and he stretched off on the child 3 times and called to the Lord and said, O Lord, my God, I pray, let this child's life return to him. And it did. And then in chapter 18, that's the next chapter, Obadiah is a God-fearer, but he's worried that when he tells the king he's found Elijah, that Elijah's going to flee away and they'll never find him. And then Ahab will kill Abijah. And Abijah is actually, Obadiah is actually a really good guy. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, he meets him and actually he says, no, I'm actually going to go back with you because I have a message for Ahab. And he did. And then Elijah on Mount Carmel, chapter 18. Okay. Again, that's probably the most famous story about Elijah, right? Yahweh is proven to be the most powerful God, and the prophets of Baal are slaughtered, and rain is finally coming. Remember, there had been 3.5 years that there hadn't been rain. And all the people saw it. They fell on their faces and said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God.
Doesn't last
long. And that'll last for a little while. But in the next chapter, Elijah flees from Jezebel. Jezebel says that he's she actually makes an oath. May God do to me and more if by this time tomorrow your life is not, you're not killed. So it's an oath, and she's powerful enough that she could actually do that. So Elijah actually is scared and flees to Mount Horeb, all the way down to the bottom of Sinai. Remember, Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia, so I'm sorry, in the
Oh yeah.
part between Egypt and Israel.
Yeah.
And that part is as far south as he can, it sounds like. All right. Oh, then later Elisha takes over. Here's the passage in verse 12. After the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. And Elijah heard it. He wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him, said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" See, now God's talking to him. And then God gives him the message that he wants him to go anoint these people, and that Elisha is going to take over his job. So in chapter 20, he goes up to Syria, and Ben-Hadad wants to take all of Israel, basically. And it takes all of he wants to have a fight with the northern kingdom, and so he wants to take everything. So God actually gives the victory to Ahab. Now remember, Ahab's really bad, and even then he spares the Syrian kings, and he gets in trouble again. So he can't hardly believe. Okay, in the midst of this battle, when King Ben-Hadad is trying to get Israel to give him all his stuff, so and basically they're going to have a battle. Verse 6 says this. About this time tomorrow, I will send my servants to you, and they will search your house and the houses of your servants, and what is desirable in your eyes, they will take in their hand and carry away. So basically, he had come down and said, everything you own is actually basically mine, because he was Ben-Hadad was actually much stronger. So it's in some sense he was in alliance with him. And so he says, well, yeah, that's true. But then he says, okay, now I'm going to come down and get it. Going, okay. Right. All right. Verse 9 says, and he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, tell my lord the king all that that you sent for your servant. At the first I will do, but this thing I cannot do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. Ben-Hadad sent to him and said, may the gods do so to me and more also. That's an oath. Okay, just so you know. If the dust of Samaria will suffice for handfuls for all the people who will follow me. So basically what he's saying is Samaria is going to be destroyed. They're all going to take a handful of dirt of all the people that are on his side, and there's not going to be enough handfuls of dirt of what's left of Samaria. Yeah. Here's what the king of Israel says. He says, tell him, let not him who girds on his armor boast like him who takes it off. Do you understand what he's saying?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's like I would summarize it like, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Yeah. Right. It makes it sound like, you're boasting that you're going to take over Samaria, but in actual fact, you haven't even done the battle yet. So let's see what happens. Right. Yeah. So I was kind of surprised that the king of Israel would mouth off to him so much like that.
I know.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to show you the kind of the difference between Yahweh and Baal and the contrast. Baal is actually a storm god, and he controls the rain. Now, remember, that was really important to them because they were in the middle of a drought with Ahab, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Elijah commands the drought and stops the rain. So in actual fact, they ought to have known already that Yahweh was the right God. And then Baal ensures agricultural fertility and bountiful harvest. Israel experienced famine during time, and yet Elijah and Elisha provide grain and oil miraculously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Baal controls lightning and fire, and Elijah commands fire from heaven in the name of Yahweh to start the altar on fire, remember? And not only burns up the altar, but the water underneath it.
Everything.
Yeah. And then Baal controls life and death, and Elijah and Elisha both heal and raise the dead in the name of Yahweh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Here's the false god who claims to make all these things. Here's Yahweh who does all these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 20 through 22. The Syrians had a fight with Ahab, and the first time they lost. Okay. So they get ready for the next year, and they thought that Yahweh must be a God of the hills. So this time they're going to have a battle in the valleys. Okay, here's what verse 13 says. Now behold, a prophet approached Ahab, king of Israel, and said, Thus says the Lord, you have seen all this great multitude. Behold, I will deliver them into your hand today, and you shall know that I am the Lord. Verse 28 says, Then the man of God came near and spoke to the king of Israel and said, Thus says the Lord, because the Arameans have said, the Lord is the God of the mountains, but he's not the God of the valleys. Therefore, I will give this great multitude into your hand, and they shall know that I am the Lord. So again, Ahab sees a brilliant picture. So he saw it in Elijah on the Mount Carmel. He sees it here when God delivers him from a vast army. And yet Ahab Ahab spares the Syrian kings rather than killing them like God had told him. Right. He spares them. Right. And so later on, they're going to have major problems with the Syrians. Yeah. Ahab just can't seem to do anything right. It's terrible. Ahab, the next chapter 21, Ahab wants Naboth's vineyard, and Jezebel has the Naboth killed so that he can get the field or the vineyard. God sends Elijah to prophesy Ahab's death, and then Ahab actually humbles himself, and God spares his life for a little longer. Then in chapter 22, we've got another war with Syria, only this time Jehoshaphat, he's from Judah. So he comes up to help the northern kingdom to fight against Syria. Now, once again, I have no idea why Jehoshaphat did that, other than they were probably in alliance. But it's going with somebody that he should have known God was punishing him and because of all his wickedness. Well, in the middle of it, there's a brilliant story. I'm going to read part of it. Starting at verse 5, it says, Moreover, Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, Please inquire first of the word of the Lord. So Jehoshaphat wants to know if there's a prophet of God so he can inquire of him. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not a prophet of the Lord here that we may inquire of him? Because all the Baal prophets had said, go up and it'll be fine. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, There is one man here whom we may inquire of the Lord, but I hate him because he does not prophesy good concerning me, but he is Israel. His name is Micaiah, the son of Imlah. But Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. Then in verse 15, it says, Then he came to the king, and the king said to him, Micaiah, shall we go up to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we refrain? And he answered him, Go up and succeed, and the Lord will give it into the hand of the king. Then the king said to him, How many times must I adjure you to speak to me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord? I don't know if he was mocking when he said, go up and succeed or something like that. Right. Or if just because it was positive, he knew it couldn't be right. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's so funny that the minute he says that, he knows that he's lying. Okay, then there's still more. And Micaiah says, Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on the throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by him, and his right on his right and on his left. Here's one of the few times we get to see into heaven. I think there's only 4 times, and this is one of them. And the Lord said, Who will entice Ahab to go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said this, and another said that. Then the Spirit of the Lord came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will entice him. And the Lord said to him, How? And he said, I will go out and be a deceiving spirit in the mouth of his prophets. See, those are the Baal prophets. And he said, You are to entice him and also prevail. Go and do so. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord has put a deceiving spirit in the mouths of all these your prophets, and the Lord has proclaimed disaster against you. Then Zedekiah, the son of Chemiah, came near and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, How did the Spirit of the Lord pass from me to speak to you? See, remember, he's one of the false prophets of Baal. And so he thinks that the Spirit of the Lord speaks through him too. Remember, Baal worship was kind of a syncretism kind of thing. So they didn't have any problem having Yahweh and Baal at the same time. Then verse 27 says, and thus says the king, Put this man in prison and feed him sparingly with bread and water until I return safely. And Micaiah said, If you indeed return safely to the Lord, he has not spoken by me.
Wow.
Micaiah's got a lot of spunk. I really enjoy listen to what he has to say. All right. Okay. now we jump down into Judah. Remember, we just got done
Mm-hmm.
with the northern kingdom, and now we're
Yep.
Jehoshaphat. Now he was also going with Ahab to fight against Assyria, if you remember. So Jehoshaphat reigns 25 years in Judah, and he's a good king. He followed after Asa, his father, but they still worshipped on the high places. Notice it doesn't say that he followed after David, his father.
Yeah.
In the southern kingdom, if they say David, that means they took down the high places, they did everything.
Yeah.
This one, they don't. So he only followed after Asa, his father. Verse 43 says, and he walked in the way of Asa his father, did not turn from it, doing right in the sight of the Lord. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Yeah, I'm assuming that was to Baal. So they also probably worshipped. It is in Jerusalem, but they probably also burnt incense on the high places, which I assume they're at that point they're trying to think. They're probably not putting all their eggs in one basket, probably wanting to make sure they've got as many gods on their side as possible, which is going to make God really mad, right?
Yeah, right.
So he makes peace with the king of Israel, and we already saw it. He goes up to go to battle with him, and actually they did lose, but he did go to battle up there with him. And then, he did one other thing. He made ships, and he went on in with the northern kingdom. They were at Ezion Geber, which is down south there, and before they ever sailed, their maiden sail, they were destroyed in a storm. So again, he should have known that he shouldn't have gone with the northern kingdom.
Yeah, right.
All right, we made it. So I didn't do any questions, but I can think of some for you. Okay,
let's run through them.
You want to do that? Okay, so
I'm ready.
All right. One question would be: is God allowed the Southern Kingdom to always have a king on the throne? Why was that?
Was that through the Davidic covenant, right?
Right.
Through the line of David, basically, is the promise he made to David.
Good.
And it is fascinating. That's another, I brought up kind of briefly, like, not only like, I guess it's kind of, these two things are related, right? In Judah, you have one line, essentially. It's still coming through the line of David. And in Israel, it's a bunch of different lines, and there's a lot of infighting. And the way you succeed in Israel is to be more evil.
Yeah.
I probably should qualify what it means to succeed. The way to be king in Israel is through increasing evil. But that has to be connected into, just that same idea of, like, they're all coming from different lines, and there's that competition and that cutthroat nature of trying to put your own, get yourself on the throne. Kings are bad mostly. I think there's a lot of one thing that seems interesting to me is it kind of connected to that same thing. You have good, like really good kings, a few of them in the South, and they're good because, well, one of the way we know is, but they're connected to David. Like they're described as being connected to David.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's two elements at least there. Like, one is that they are they're faithful to God, but also that they are actively going against idol worship. And they're actively going against, like, the worship in the high places, probably to Baal. But you still have decent kings, good kings that I would guess they're still faithful personally. There's still some kind of personal righteousness, but that they're not enforcing worship of Yahweh in any way with their people. And then, it's the total flip in the North. It seems like they've just there's almost a desperation there. They're fully willing to kind of debase themselves or go after any supposed God for what they think is going to be good, but is never good.
Yeah. Why did the Northern Kingdom fall so easily into Baal worship? Any ideas?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if this is necessarily explicit in the text, but you'd have to think that it has to do with Jeroboam, I guess, right? He was the first king in the North, right?
Yeah.
he sets up a temple to Baal.
Yeah.
Like it seems like at the beginning, his efforts to try to kind of establish his kingdom as a legitimate Israel, or a legitimate, home for the, all the tribes of Israel, really set them in the wrong way. That was a pretty huge act of disobedience. So I wonder if that's kind of where the split,
Yeah.
like they just keep pursuing in that path.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, I think probably syncretism is real easy. It's not just taking Yahweh, but it's taking Yahweh and Baal. And I think that was why they, well, if Yahweh's not going to bring us rain, let's go to Baal, who that's supposed to be his very thing. And here's the bad thing. If it rains once or twice when they prayed to Baal, then that would just increase the odds that next time they're going to do that same thing. So if Satan wants to hook the Northern Kingdom in really well, all you have to do is a couple times when they pray to Baal is make it rain or have it rain, and that'll make it even easier for them to do it the next time. So I think syncretism was the reason. Is it was so easy for them to take God plus anything else that could help them, and I think that's what happened. So. Well, I think that's what we've learned for today. We've got more for next time. Yeah. And so I figure we can, there's still quite a bit more. Sorry about that.
There is. I'm excited to talk more about Elijah and Elisha. Yes. I don't know if you remember this or not. Whenever I was one of your students back in the days of Mill Valley, I actually, in my preaching class, I did a
sermon on it.
My sermon was on Elisha, and I asked you some questions about it. So I look forward to having this conversation again.
All right. I'll see you next week.
That sounds good.